Hello, and you're very welcome back. Why are you fucking jumping? Okay, so, hello, I'm trying to do a podcast with my parents. And I just started with the normal way I start every podcast, and my mother decided to fucking jump out of her seat. Okay, so that's just probably a good indication as to how the rest of this podcast is going to go. Right, so on my right hand side I have my very lovely mother. Say hello.
Hello.
And on my left hand side I have my very lovely father. Say hello.
Hello.
There you go. So, you all get to hear about me all the time. That's kind of the whole point of the podcast. But you don't get to hear, well, one, is it true? And two, from the people who made me the way I am, both good and bad, I suppose. So we're just going to have a few chats. Mum and Dad are going to tell a few stories about me to try and embarrass me. Going to talk about some movies from my childhood. And then, of course, we're going to have an old bit of a mental health talk. And kind of just hear things from a different perspective, because like I said, you get to hear from me a lot about my mental health, and I think it'd be very interesting to just have a conversation with my parents and see my parents' side of what it was like trying to deal with me going through what I was going through. So we're going to start with a few stories just about me that kind of, basically, if you didn't have a clue who I was, these stories should hopefully sum me up, and they're hopefully not really, really bad stories. I believe the mother is going to go first with a story.
Yeah.
Right. Speak loud now.
I can speak loud.
Right, go on.
Because not really stories, such just some of the things you used to say when you were cute and small and lovely. And one of the things you always were obsessed with doing was you were going to build a house next door to me, so you'd always live beside me, which I thought was very cute, until you put in the part that you were going to make a pathway between the two houses, so that when I was in my wheelchair I could still come in and cook your dinner for you.
Yeah, that makes sense, like.
I just, the whole idea when I got old, I wasn't supposed to be doing that for you. I was supposed to not have to cook your dinner for you. And my other image of you was going around outside with your little sister following you around the place because she thought you were just so cool. And when we moved in here first, we had big mounds of earth down the back of the garden, and you'd go up and you'd see Claudia trying to follow you up with her little legs, and you'd go down, you'd go back up a second time to make sure that she followed you around the place, because she was stone crazy mad. Then she was mad about you.
She still is, shrunk class.
Yeah. So you weren't too bad as a child, I suppose. There was just, and going around the house constantly singing with wooden spoon, especially when we were trying to sing Tom Jones' Sex Bomb at 3 years of age, going around.
Even though I can't sing.
Even though you can sing now.
Yeah.
You did sing once. You could sing once when you sang for Holy Communion.
I know I sang for my Holy Communion.
And then your voice broke, and you sounded horrendous. And no, you're not too bad. No, that song you did yesterday wasn't too bad, I have to say. And some of the songs you do aren't too bad.
Some of them, but some of them are bad.
No. I like the songs you do when you do the cover versions. I like those ones.
So all my songs.
Yeah. Basically, most of them, yeah. You're not too bad. I'm not going to give you a big hit now, because there's only one main singer in this family. And that's your sister.
I'm fully aware of that.
You're the fun, cool, acting, idiot, family.
Acting what?
Acting. For acting, like, for doing jokes and making me laugh.
Alright, okay. Not acting the bollocks.
Well, you do that too, but mainly you make me laugh.
Alright.
That's
So,
all I have to say about you now, love.
what, as a young fella?
As a young fella, you were just very, very kind and caring. Do you remember when you tried to do that fundraiser for, when you came home from school very upset about?
Hold on a second now. Don't say tried to do.
No, you did.
I successfully.
No, I will. No, you did. I remember you coming in from school, primary school, so you were probably, 11?
Mm-hmm.
And being very upset about the tsunami in Haiti.
Earthquake.
Okay. It was a tsunami on.
It wasn't. It was an earthquake.
It was a tsunami. Okay, I apologise. Earthquake. Anyway, whatever it was.
Why are you arguing over that, like?
Was it not? You were very worried about it. And you wanted to do something. So I said, right, what are you going to do? So you come up with the idea of doing a massive barbecue. And fair play to you, you did. No, I have to say you did. You went to a local organisation and they gave you the food. You even went on radio.
I did.
At 11. And you stood up there that day very proud of yourself, looking around and you raised over 3,000 euros.
€3,557 and 10 cents.
Okay, love. And I remember getting down and getting the big check. And you standing with the big check.
I did.
So yeah, you were always very kind. Then you dyed your hair blue.
I did.
Which your grandfather wasn't too sure about.
No.
But you dyed your hair blue. You even fasted for 24 hours for another charity.
I did. No, I just do it because I'm fucking.
Because you're poor.
Because I'm poor. I can't afford food. It's not really. It's not really the same thing, is it?
Can't afford food. So no, you've always been very kind.
Right.
Loving young fella, and you grew up.
And Father, what have you any nice stories to add?
Well, I suppose my story is really around the day that I realised that you weren't ever going to be anything to do with soccer, and it was a sad day for me because obviously as a father I had hopes that you'd play for Queen's Park Rangers and be a fine striker or something like that.
For anyone,
that was never going to.
For anyone who doesn't know, Queen Park Rangers are actually a real soccer team.
They are a real soccer team.
They're just not very well known.
They're not well. They're well known for being shit. But apart from that, so we were in. It was actually in Ballingarry of all places, and you were playing for Kilcolman against Ballingarry, and your uncle was there to observe you as well. And there was a corner, and your uncle shouted to you, "Owen, watch the post," meaning to watch the guy who was at that side of the field who might score a goal. And you stood there and looked directly at the post, and you turned to your uncle and you put your thumbs up. And I thought, oh yeah, that's my boy, and my dreams of you being
soccer went out the window.
Went with that, yeah.
I mean, if you still had a bit of hope at that stage, that's kind of on you, because I was atrocious. Like,
yes, I know.
Well, you were very good at finding out about the fellow you were marking.
yeah, I'd have great chats with him, like, but
The ball
would pass,
but you were
yeah,
still
I don't know
finding,
too.
and you'd come in and tell us everything about the young fella, but you knew nothing about the match or even what the score was at the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a sad day for me. I suppose, and on the reverse side of that, a very proud day for me. Many years before that, we hadn't actually been back in Ireland for very long, and we went up to Mullingar to see some friends of ours, and we went out to a fair. It was during the summer, and Owen said to his mum, "Oh, can I go get my face painted?" And Noreen said, "Yeah, no problem whatsoever." And off they went, and they were gone for 20 minutes or whatever. And he came back, and I had the biggest smile on my face when he came back to me, because he came back with the cross of St. George on his face, the red cross with the white background on it. I think that was probably the only person who actually asked for that.
Probably, yeah.
On the day, but I felt very, very proud in that moment.
But to be fair, I wasn't entirely aware of the history at that stage, so
Probably not, no.
I did have an excuse. I was just like, "Oh, I'm from England. I want to represent."
Proud of his English.
Probably.
And the one when he was doing the golfing lessons.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know why he did that either, but anyway, why he did a golfing
So he was doing golfing lessons. I think it was just one of those things that they were forced to do.
You kept trying to put me into sport, and I'm not sporty.
Did you find something on?
And the guy who was running the course was trying to get to know the children, so he just asked them a few things about them. Now I happened to be just hitting a few balls down at the golfing range at the time, and I was just listening into what was going on, and he was asking Owen, and Owen had been in Ireland then for maybe
6 or 7
6 or 7
years.
years at that stage, so his English accent had well and truly gone, and he had a fine Colchi accent at the time, and he was trying to convince the guy who was running the course that he was English, and the guy was having none of it. He just thought he was winding him up, and Owen turns to me and he says, "Am I talking English, Daddy?" And I said, "Yes, you are, son."
Yeah, you see, the trouble was his English accent got him into an awful lot of problems. Do you remember being behind at Keating's?
No.
We had these friends called Keating's, and we got back to my mum and dad's house. And while we were at Keating's house, there was a boy called Mihal. And Mihal was showing Owen what good fun it was to come down the banisters. We got back, and Owen was telling Grandad, and he said, "Oh, and Grandad, me hole on the banisters." Grandad thought it was being extremely rude. And he realised what he was actually talking about. So the English, and the day you went in, and he asked you, "Would you like some pudding on it?" And Owen says, "Yes, please," thinking he was going to get dessert. And Dad lobbed a couple of pieces of black pudding on the plate in front of him. Yeah. Good times.
Good times indeed.
So basically, a lot of my stories so far have come from my stupidity. That's basically what you're saying.
No, not all of them. I'm saying about how kind you are. The last couple, yeah. But
Or just me
those
doing
are the
stupid
things
things.
that stick out in your head. You know, when you do nice things like the fundraisers and things like that. And I won't talk about the bad things you did to your sister and all that, because that would show you in a bad light.
But Jesus. Well, no, you have to explain now because that sounds fucking awful.
Well, the fact that you hospitalised her
Yeah.
When?
When you pushed her off
and
the
you
bed.
tried to cover it up.
No.
You pushed her off the bed
I-
and hurt her hand, and she took the blame for it, bless her, and she said she fell off the bed because she didn't want you to get into trouble.
Yeah, that's fine, but I never asked her to do that. That was all entirely her. I never asked her to take.
And the time you pushed her into the Christmas tree.
I didn't push her in. I kicked her. I kicked her into the Christmas tree. She tried to jump on top of me, and I kicked her, and she went flying.
See?
But we didn't tell you because you were sick in the bed.
Yeah.
You were taken to the bed that time because you weren't well.
No, why did I wonder?
Oh.
But no, but you're kicking your sister into the Christmas tree, knocking off the bed and hospitalising her.
I didn't hospitalise her. She had to go to hospital and get
she
her
said
arm
that-
looked at.
But you see, that's what you do. You maim people. She said
I maim people.
well, she said it has a wonky thing on the side of her hand, like you maimed James and he's got a wonky finger. That was all down to you.
I never maimed you.
Maimer.
Huh?
I never maimed you.
You've got the scars to prove it.
But that's from giving birth. That doesn't count.
No, you never maimed me, God bless you. No, you never hurt me.
Right. Any other stories?
No, not that I can think of. I might have. No, not that I can think of.
Nothing.
You were a fun boy though. You always tried to make us laugh. And
Fun boy.
in your younger days, you were fun. And then you grew up, but you were very fun.
When I grew up and got depressed.
Yeah.
We're not doing the mental health bit yet. We're not gone into that yet. For fuck's sake.
Oh, another thing actually I remember, which was a bit infuriating for me, was we went to Disneyland, Paris.
Oh, yeah. Our big
And-
brave boy.
Our big brave boy, and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to go on this ride." And there was the usual thing in Disneyland Paris, was the queue for an hour, and we went all the way to the front of the queue, and then he decided he was going to back out. And then okay, that was fine. Then he was like, "No, I'm definitely going to go on this one. Definitely going to go on this one." And I'd swear to God, I was in the queue for an hour and a half, and we got to the front again, and he backed out, and I said, "Right, well, you can go walk off there, which is the exit to go out," and I was going on it anyway. So.
But in
Yeah.
fairness, Joe, I do have to commend you. You didn't get angry at me. You
No.
were probably
Yeah.
raging,
Yeah.
but you didn't actually get angry at me. So
And which was worse, that or he taking you all about being the big boy going to see QPR with you?
that was scary.
Oh
though.
God, yeah.
That was scary.
That was again. That was very upsetting for me. The first time I actually took him to a match at QPR,
Bonding time.
bonding time. So I was thinking, I'm going to make sure that he's not a Manchester United supporter or a Liverpool supporter like most of the young fellas in the country. So I took him to the game, and I thought, here we go. I'll fill him up with treats, so chocolates and Coke and all the rest of it, and he'll be happy out. And the game had started. It was about 5 minutes in. And obviously there was a bit of chanting going on. As you might be surprised to hear, there was actually a big crowd at the game, and there was chanting going on and lots of shouting, and I was probably part of that. And Owen was sat there crying his little eyes out because it was too noisy.
It was too loud. And it was scary.
And
Yeah,
he was scared and he wanted to go home.
it was scary.
Then he had to leave the match.
And I had to leave the match after about 15 minutes. Oh God.
Who was playing?
QPR were playing Luton.
And who won?
We won 2-1.
Oh.
So
You were, yeah. Do you remember this?
not that he's a complete disappointment to me.
No.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really nice to say it.
But
Like,
it's lovely when you overcome your fears. Remember we went to that on that place with Michelle Gaskin, and we went into that forest and we kept going deeper and deeper. We couldn't
what we got
find
lost.
our way out, and you kept saying it's okay, and you kept pointing out these trees. In all seriousness, you kept pointing out these trees, saying, "Well, you could do that, and we could make a shelter, and we could sit inside there." And I could think, please let us out. But you were quite happy that you could have made a tent for us, and we could have stayed inside in the forest. And then we went to this lovely park, and there was slides and rides in England, and we were there for a good 3 hours, and my heart was breaking for you, bless you, because there was this slide. It was like a sheer drop thing. Now it wasn't very high. Claudia went up and did it, and my friend Michelle, she tried, and I think, and you kept, but you see things, you couldn't switch off from it and say, right, I'm not going to do it, and we'd be off, no, I'm going to do it, and we go back over again, and in the end I said, no, Owen, look, no, we're going home, and she said, no, I think it was 6 times, and each time Michelle went up with you because I couldn't go up. And Michelle went up with you, and the last time we did it, you were so happy. And you wanted to do it again, but it was too late because the place was closed. And we had to come home. But we've been there for 7 hours. But you did do it, so...
I did, eventually.
Eventually. So you overcame a lot of your fears. Eventually, it just took you a while.
Yeah, see, now I realise that's just anxiety. But at the time, it was, no, Owen is just fucking... I can't say pussy, 'cause that's too harsh.
Chicken shit?
Chicken shit, that's
Yeah.
better.
Okay.
Yeah. Christ. I suppose we can't do a podcast. Well, normally we do a movie of the week, but with the fact that you're here, I think people underestimate how much I like movies. Or I think people think, oh, he only just got into movies. So I have the two of you here to back up that I've always loved, like, watching movies. Well, it weren't DVDs, they were VHS videos, but that I've always obsessed with them. Yeah.
Desperate. And the thing you had to do was no matter where we went or what we were watching, especially if it was Spot or Pingu, you had to hold the box in your hand.
But I still do that. Like, because I still obviously collect DVDs and stuff. So if I'm watching a DVD now, I'm watching it on the projector, but I have the box in my hand because I'm reading the back or trying to figure out stuff.
Even you had one little friend, and every time we'd go over to her house, she'd quite happily give you the box. So you'd sit up beside her on the chair, and you'd sit there quite happily with the box in your hand the whole time. Oh, that's the other thing you used to do to her too. You frightened her.
Oh,
remember?
No.
Remember?
Oh, I do.
The one you was afraid of.
Yeah, Ainsley Harriott.
And you used to quite happily sit there with the Argus catalogue, and you'd show her all the toys, and then you'd suddenly turn to the page of him with a food mixer, and she'd scream, and you'd close, and you'd go on to the next to the toys, and you'd go back again to show her.
Such an obscure thing to be afraid of, though.
Yeah.
Ainsley Harriott.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, stop going on tangents. We're talking about movies now.
Oh yeah, and what was the other thing you used to love watching? Now you say you didn't like Pete's Dragon.
I
most
didn't.
Certainly did.
I didn't. That was Claudia's
no,
movie.
it wasn't. It was
yours.
It
wasn't.
was. I remember you being very small and sitting up beside me watching it.
Because Claudia was watching it.
No, Claudia
Yes.
wasn't there on.
Why?
She wasn't even a twinkle in my eye, or your father's eye, or whatever the saying is. It was just you. You did love it, and you love Mary Poppins.
I didn't.
Yes,
Mary
you did.
Poppins was 100% Claudia.
You love Mary Poppins.
I did
You
not.
know all the songs. You used to sing along to all the songs.
Because I had no choice. Because
I suppose with regards to the Mary Poppins thing,
It was
Claudia was probably the bigger fan, but
No.
I would watch it as
Yeah.
well.
yeah, because I was still getting to watch a movie.
Yeah.
But it was Claudia's decision. So
Yeah.
back in your
I'm trying to
box.
remember when we used to have pick movies. What you used to watch? Well, what the thing was, if it was your turn to pick, you'd be fine. But just Claudia's turn to pick into. Oh, for God's sake, I have to watch that.
Yeah, because she'd watch shit like Barbie, Princess.
Yeah, but
nonsense.
it was.
yeah.
But it was her. It was her choice.
Serafina or whatever.
Yeah,
it
that
was.
was the cat.
That was the cat. Thing. There was no. We had a cat called Sarah. What was your one called?
That was one of the characters in the book in the.
Oh, yeah, but what was your cat called?
Yeah, that was the name of the cat in the
Yeah,
film.
no.
And that's where she named
Oh,
her
yeah,
cat. I had a female cat called Ronaldinho because I liked Barcelona at the time.
Yes. Yes, you did. I'm trying to remember what else you used to watch.
Well, I suppose when I was watching films when I was younger, it was always with,
Family.
well, it would be with you.
Mm.
But then a lot of my film knowledge,
Would have come from your dad.
you're fucking taking the piss out of me for. I sound like you, like. Fucking hell. Would have been from the father, because like there's many films that someone would ask me, oh, how do you know about that? And I would be like, oh, dad showed me. Like, you showed me all the Batmans. We got a box set of them, like the Michael Keaton Batmans and all those.
Jack Nicholson.
And we watched The Fly.
Yeah.
Oh.
You've showed me. Christ, what else? So many. Oh, Porky's. You showed me that for the first time,
That was a good film.
which I cannot find anywhere now.
No.
It's probably banned, is it?
I doubt it.
I
very
doubt it's
much.
banned. There's a lot worse than Porky's.
Airplane.
Airplane, yeah, all those like Hot Shots.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the Fly, when I thought, oh, that might be an interesting film for Owen to watch, because it was really to show, because it was back in the 90s that was made, and just to show what the special effects and how they did the special effects back then, and how it actually was quite good for its time, and also just the character of Jeff Goldblum, and how we put a connection between him and the Joker.
Because the way he was doing stuff in the transformation, like licking his lips and all that, was very like Heath Ledger.
Yeah, even though obviously he was first at doing it.
First, and then little years in between. But I think a lot of my film knowledge or film love is definitely kind of spawned from you showing me films and stuff. But I've always kind of liked that. Like there'd be certain films that I watched that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to show. Well, if and when I have kids, but like to pass on that as well, because obviously like the movies that if and when I have kids, the movies that they'll be watching will be very, very different to the movies that I was watching.
Yeah.
But like just like the movies I was watching when I was younger were very different to the movies that you were watching when you were younger. But I'll still.
There were films we watched.
Well, yeah, films, yeah.
Or films.
but I'll still be able to show my kids like what I consider to be classics, even though at the moment they're still just new movies. New movies, man, not blue movies.
But I should hope you won't be showing your children blue movies.
Sure. Right, how far are we? 20 minutes. 20 minutes you've been talking now.
Yeah.
And you're
Try to
doing
talk
fine.
round.
Well, a minutes ago you were in bits because you're like, oh, I don't know what to be saying to anyone.
Yeah, but I have to make you sound good, you say.
But sure, people probably won't even listen to you.
I'm sure it's fine. They don't.
Right. So all the fun is over now.
Oh no.
This is the serious bit. The old mental health.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's already crying. No, she's not. Like I said, you know a fair bit about my kind of mental health and stuff, but I don't think I've ever told my parents' side, or I've never even kind of discussed what it was like trying to. I suppose maybe dealing with me is probably a harsh way of saying it, but it's probably the best way of putting it. For context, I know I was going through kind of mental health things for a long time, like definitely kind of starting at 13, maybe a bit before, but I didn't really tell anyone until I was 18. So it's not even it's not my parents' fault to like at a certain degree that they didn't know. I wasn't telling them. No, they might have been aware. That's something we'll obviously get into in a few minutes, but just so that in case you think, oh Jesus, they were really bad parents, like they weren't. They genuinely didn't know for a good chunk of the first kind of half of it. But one story I want to tell, because I do find it kind of funny now. It wasn't funny at the time, but it was when I had decided that I wanted to start talking about my mental health, and I still hadn't said it to Mum and Dad at this point. But me and Dad were gone to the doctors because we both had the same sore throat. So we were both in the doctor's office together, chatting away, and then she was like, yeah, no bother, you can get your prescription there, head out. And I stayed sitting down, and I just said to Dad, I was like, oh, I want to talk to the doctor there for a second. So Dad kind of walked out, and the doctor was kind of looking at me like, what in the name of God is going on? And I completely broke down inside her office, and I was explaining, I feel really down, I feel really sad, I don't even fully understand kind of what I'm going through all the time. So she listened, and then she was like, okay, would you like a number for a counsellor? And I was like, yeah, yes please. So she went onto her computer and she was looking for numbers, whatever, and then she kind of started laughing, and I was like, what is she laughing at? Like, I'm here, I'm after pouring my heart out, and this woman is here laughing at me. And she turned around and she said, so we do have one number here for a counsellor who works locally, they're very good, but you probably already have the number. I was like, what? So the number they tried to give me was yours. It was my father's number, because my father happens to be a counsellor, which I suppose in one way people would think it would be easier to talk to you. I found it harder to talk to you because in my head I'd put like a block up that I was like, okay, I don't know if he's giving me advice or he's talking to me. Is he talking to me as my dad, or is talking to me as a counsellor?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem of a counsellor trying to counsel their own family members, because they have it's much more difficult to have no preconceived ideas about what they're going through, etc. Because obviously they know the person very well. So then that's why it's very difficult to actually counsel someone that you know very well.
So I suppose the first kind of question that I'll throw out there is, do ye have any kind of specific memory or specific kind of time that you like remember of me coming out and saying I'm not feeling good? And if you do, were you aware of it before I told you?
For me, no, I wasn't aware at all.
No.
I suppose the main time that it would have been that I can remember is when you didn't want to go to secondary school, when in between years 2 and 3, But I thought that was just a case of you not wanting to go down,
Want to go to school, yeah.
not going to go to school. You know, after the first few times we sort of let it slide, but then it became a more regular thing, and there was no real feedback from yourself to tell us that the reasons why you didn't want to go. Obviously, things came to a head where there was a major bullying incident down at the school, and we went down and I talked to some of the parents, etc., and got very little satisfaction out of that. And we eventually, after having several conversations, decided to move you out of that school. But other than that, we weren't really aware of how you were feeling. We just thought, teenage boy doesn't want to go to school, and that was that.
Yeah, I suppose once we knew about the bullying, we put it down to the bullying. And then you changed schools, and for us, when you changed schools, you seemed to be happier. So we had no inkling. I mean, obviously, when you came home from the doctor that time, you sat us down and you told us how you were feeling. And I suppose, to be honest, back then I was thinking, depression. He doesn't know what depression is. What reason has he got to be depressed? He's only a young fella. He's using that word because it's going around there. He generally has no reason to be depressed. What would he be depressed about? And I was saying, well, he's been bullied a lot in school, and that has been difficult for him. That's what I was putting it down to. And even when I was talking to you in the room that day, I could find myself getting cross with you, and which wasn't helping you. And then when you mentioned being on the tablets, I was thinking, oh, for God's sake, you can't be on tablets, and they'll have you on you forever. And I was spiralling as I do. But I didn't realise how bad you were then. And my next idea of you being very bad was that period after Dad died. Obviously, I knew it was hard for you going to college, and I knew you would be upset. And I think I did say to you one stage, "Are you talking to someone?" And you said yeah. But it wasn't until the November, when you were coming home every weekend, but you were sick, and I was giving you Gaviscon, and I was trying to buy all these things to help you. And again, I just thought it's all the stress over Grant, and he started college, and it's all new, and you had moved into an apartment, and I was thinking it was all new. But I remember coming home one Sunday, you were sitting on the sofa in a ball, absolutely in a ball, and you were, 21 then, and you were in a ball in the corner of the sofa, and you were having a panic attack, and you bawled, and you told me what was going on, but then your main problem was the fact that college was struggling, and that you were worried that you hadn't done some of your assignments, and they were going to be ringing us, and you were concerned that you were going to flock out of college. And we had a good chat about, but what got me more was the fact that as a parent I was suffering the loss of Dad, but I felt awful then that I wasn't able to help you through it. And you turned around to me, being you, and you just said, but your ma'am, I didn't tell you because you had enough to deal with losing Dad yourself. And we got talking about your sessions with the counsellor, and one of the things that came up was the sound that you had going around in your head when Dad rang you to tell you that Dad was gone, Grant was gone. You could hear me in the background. And I know for a long, long time feeling guilty because my grief didn't allow me to see what you were going through and to help you. And as a parent, that's quite difficult.
Yeah, but I suppose that, like, the whole Granddad thing was a very unique situation, I suppose. Not many people go through that. Grief in general is something that there's no guidelines. There's no like one good way of dealing with it.
No.
Yeah, like you said, like one of the things that kind of stuck in my head was when Dad rang to say that Granddad had passed away or whatever. I could hear you screaming in the background. There was that, and there was the flashing blue lights.
Yeah.
And those were things that like kind of stuck with me for a long time.
But even that aside, it wasn't until you put that video up on Facebook, and I wouldn't look at the book you made, and then I looked at it, and the on the Sunday evening, the first thing what got me was that first picture of that little boy with the ginger top and the ginger hair. But it was like, it was me hearing it for the first time. That all those times when you were a teenager and you were lashing out, and I was thinking you were just being a bold little so and so and being aggressive, it was because there was all these things in your head and you didn't know how to control them. And I went to bed that I did feel that night that, oh my God, I failed you again. I should have known this is what was going through your head. I should have known you were depressed. I should have protected you. And you see, when you're little, it's very easy to protect you when you're little because you fall, you get hurt. You stick a bandage, you give her a hug, and it's all better. But suddenly, I was seeing for the first time that this is what you were struggling with for so long, and why couldn't I see the signs, and why wasn't I able to help you? I remember the Monday morning you rang me when you knew I'd seen it, and the first thing you said was, "Ma'am, it wasn't your fault." No. And it's nobody's fault. It is, but I suppose that's what you've taught me about depression, is that depression for years was something that you associate with older people, and the older people would say, "Oh God, help us, they're suffering, they're nervous," and it was all whispered and it was never talked about. But to see someone that you love so much out there bearing it all for everyone to see, and even before that, I used to have something called fibromyalgia, and I'd get very down with that. But then there'd be times I'd be down, and seeing you come out, what made me realise there was times when I suffered from depression without the fibromyalgia, without anything else. But you taught me that it's okay to be like that. And one of the things I remember, when I was having a bad day, you wouldn't want to talk to anyone, and I wouldn't want to talk to anyone, and I normally talk, and you'd come up with this idea of, you gave me a hat, so when I was having a particularly bad day and didn't want to talk, I put the hat on, and then no one came near me and spoke, because they knew the hat was on, it meant that I was having a bad day. So it's actually amazing for me as a mom of a 25-year-old son to say that you taught me about depression, and that it's okay. And the one thing I'll always think of in my head for you saying it's okay not to be okay. And an awful lot of young people older people of my age don't understand that. It's all, you don't talk about and you don't air it out in public, and you definitely don't discuss your mental health in public, whereas it's very important for your age group to do that.
But like a lot of what you said there was, you didn't necessarily realise at the time. You didn't realise until a long time afterwards.
No, you don't put depression with a 13 or 14-year-old young fella.
I know, and well, to be fair, at the time,
you probably didn't realise it was depression either.
I didn't know. I just thought it was, I'm just a bit sad because I'm bullied, or because I don't have a girlfriend, or because whatever it was at the time. It's only having done work and through talking with counsellors and stuff over the years that I realised how long I've been going through it, or kind of how long I've had it for, or whatever.
I suppose the other difficult thing is it's very difficult. I mean, like you were saying, you were 13, 14. That's a very difficult time for a teenager anyway. So there's a whole pile of things going on. So it's very difficult for you then to pour your heart out to somebody, whether you know them or you don't know them, and try to explain your feelings, because you're still trying to understand your own feelings. I mean, there's plenty of adults in the world who still don't know how to deal with their own feelings. So how you can expect someone who's 13 or 14 to be able to express how they're feeling, or even understand how they're feeling, it's very, very difficult. And there's no easy solution. I know we all say go talk to somebody, but I suppose there's also the feeling as well when you're that age, is like, who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to understand me? Because, as a parent of a child, if they start saying, "Oh, I'm a bit fed up," and all the rest of it, again, you'd be thinking, well, you're only a young person. What do you need to be fed up for?
Yeah.
Or is this another excuse for not going to school, or not doing this, or not doing that? So there's a whole pile of understanding has to be done for people to actually engage properly.
I think that's why I wanted to have this kind of conversation and put it out there, because like there was times, and it wasn't out of ye being bad parents or anything like that you would have, I suppose, disregarded it again, because you don't automatically assume that if your 13, 14-year-old son is coming out saying that they're having these feelings, that it's not just like a hormones thing, or that it's just a bad day. Like how do you kind of judge that? And like I said, it's not that you were bad parents or anything. It's just that 9 times out of 10 you're not going to assume that your teenage son is actually depressed or is going through any sort of mental health problem.
No, unfortunately, you think he's just been a poor little son, so he doesn't want to.
Didn't want to go to school.
Didn't want to go to school, or didn't want to do any of those kind of things. But looking back now, and it's hindsight is a wonderful thing, but looking back now, we can see that there was parts where you were probably being a bold little.
There was sometimes that I just didn't want to clean my room, like, that's fair enough.
But then there were times when, but it's about how that going forward, that can change for our generation, and for even people coming up with small children behind us. It's to be able to have I always felt we had a very open line of communication, and we did. You could talk to us about anything, other things, like apart from you were able to tell us about the bullying, you could talk to us about things. But this was the one thing that got me, that I thought, he could tell us about everything. We could talk about sex, we could talk about everything, but you couldn't come to us and tell us what you were going through. But that probably was because you didn't know yourself there was depression back then. You didn't know when you were 13 and 14 it was depression, and it was.
I think it was that I didn't fully know what I was going through.
Yeah.
I also wasn't fully aware that what I was feeling wasn't normal. I assumed it was something that all teenagers go through. I thought that it was just another part of
growing up,
puberty, that you just start to feel a bit shit about yourself. Or I just put it down to kind of negative feelings because I was being bullied. It was more once I left that school and I went to the other school and things were doing well and I still managed to kind of have these bad thoughts. Then I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is actually like a mental health thing, that like I was out of a bad place, kind of like physically, like I wasn't being bullied, but I was still managing to kind of feel down and feel sad and feel depressed. So I think that was more the turning point for me. But that was still when I was 16, 17. It still took me another year to actually tell anyone. I suppose as parents, what advice would you give, or can you give to someone who might be in a similar situation, or to someone who may have been in a similar situation, like where their child was suffering or is suffering with their mental health? Or is there any advice you do have to give, or do you just
I suppose as a mum, I would just say that you need to kind of be, nowadays, especially with younger children, especially kids now 12, 13, there's an awful lot of pressure on them. There's a pressure on them to look this way, there's a pressure on them to wear certain things, pressure on them to have the right phone, the right video games, all of that. And parents are working. It's very, very difficult after parents are working to be able to keep on top of everything. But I suppose it would be to say, try and listen to your child, and try and watch out for them, and just be there for them. It's very difficult, but just try and watch out. And if people are listening to things like this and getting the advice, well, then they'll get the idea, oh, maybe that's what's wrong with them. It's not just that they're playing up, or it's not just that. It's a very difficult society bringing children up these days, because like there's so much pressure on them. There's so much pressure on parents to have to work, and feeling guilty about working, and then not spending enough time with their children, and all that vicious circle. So I suppose it's just listen to them, and always tell them there's an open line of communication. And the one thing that you've taught me as well, is that you don't have to be very bad before you go to talk to someone. If you break something, you'll go to the doctor and get it fixed. But your thing has always been, don't wait till it actually gets broken. Just anybody can go and talk to a counsellor at any stage in their lives, just because we all carry so much shit around, and it's good sometimes just to go have and see it as being having a chat. It's not this big taboo about, oh my God, she's going to a counsellor. You're just going to have a chat with someone who's not involved with you, who's not emotionally involved, and you can feel you can just let it all out. And once you do, then you leave that room, it's like a weight off your shoulders. So I would say, I think there should be counsellors going into secondary schools. I think 5th and 6th class, especially transition year, there should be more people going and talking to them about their mental health rather than the academic side of things.
But like I was saying that last week with James, that we did have people coming in talking to us, but they made it sound like depression or anxiety or all these mental health things, these are things that like full-blown adults have.
Yeah.
Like you don't get them till you're like your late 20s, early 30s. It was never even kind of discussed that you could potentially be going through that now.
But if your child is facing into doing their leaving cert, and the pressure is put on them to get a certain amount of points to be able to get a job, and you have to be academic, and you have to be, that's when they need mindfulness.
The pressure being put on them at home to study every weekend.
Yeah, but that's part of being a parent too. And I know, looking back, but there was a lot of times, you could have done a lot better.
No, we're not starting this argument now.
Well, you could have done.
Ma'am is very disappointed with the points I got in the leaving cert.
Owen, you're a lazy Can I curse?
You can curse,
You're
yeah.
a lazy fucker. To be very honest, because when you like something, you will work your arse off for it. So yes, there was an awful lot of school that you didn't like as well,
Yeah, so
and
there you
you
go.
didn't work your arse off for
I
it,
didn't.
and you could have got much better. But that's not what I'm going on about.
Are you
I'm
happy
going
with,
about
one second now, are you happy with the points I got in the Leaving Cert?
Don't try and set your father off against me now.
I'm
No,
not.
well, absolutely not.
You see?
Because I totally agree with you, Mother. I think that you could have worked harder and you could have got more. But look, like your mum said, unfortunately, the academic side, it wasn't necessarily what you were invested in yourself. Okay, probably one of your best subjects was English, because it was, because you had the opportunity to write a story, and it was something that that you were invested in. All the other academics, so the history or the maths and the sciences, that's not something that wasn't something for you.
No.
So from that point of view, you weren't willing to put the work in or extra work in because it was harder for you to do. So
No, I have to be very honest with you now, lads. The reason why I didn't do good was because I was very depressed.
No, you were
I
not.
was very depressed.
No, you were
and-
not. No, we're not having that. Scratch that now. That definitely didn't happen. Because when you went into college, you were able to work your arse off because you wanted to get into
exactly.
LIT. So it proved it was there.
Yeah,
But anyway, what I would say to parents is just... Yes, you need to put a little bit of pressure on children, because if you don't, they'll sit back and they'll do nothing. I think that you want them to do their best. That's all you want. So we knew you weren't doing your best. So that's what that was all about.
Right.
So admit now, for once in your life, it wasn't nothing to do with depression. It was just the fact you were a lazy fucker, and you could have worked harder.
I was very, very sad, very deep in my mind at the time.
yeah.
I'm sticking to that.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it. We'll agree to disagree on that one
Right.
anyway.
Now from the father.
Well, I suppose really just basically just agreeing a lot with what Noreen just said, that the fact that it's going to be, as a parent, you really need to have that, make sure there is an open line of communication. And again, with the pressure of work and all the rest of it, going out to different things for your kids and all that, to actually have the time to have a sit down where there's a free open space to talk about anything that you need, that you want to or you need to. And again, that can become more difficult if there's younger siblings in the family. You may not want to discuss that in front of them. So it really is making sure that there is an opportunity to have that open communication and understanding. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. Somebody might be happy just talking to the parents and they might be fine with this. Some may need to go to see a doctor to get medication to help. Some may need to go to a doctor, get medication, and go to a counsellor. There's lots of different ways that this can be sort of worked around or worked with and dealt with. So it really is a case of making sure that you explore every avenue that you can to try and find out, get to the bottom of what's going on.
I think the one thing that I'd probably want to put out there to parents is that, like you were both saying, you can reassure the child that you're there to talk if you want to talk, and that there are these other options if they're the options you want. But sometimes it'll take a lot longer for us to realise that that's what we want to do. Because it's a very hard thing to try and deal with when you're kind of 13, 14. Like, your brain is developing. You're in school, you're trying to learn all these things, you're meeting new people, and in my case, no matter what I did, my brain was fighting me, or was trying to shut me down, or telling me that no matter what I was doing, that it wasn't good enough, or that I wasn't good enough, and all of this. And that's obviously difficult enough on its own, but then the idea of trying to even explain that to someone else was scary. It was probably the best way of putting it. So I think it is obviously extremely difficult to be a parent to a child who's gone through some mental health stuff. But I think you kind of have to try and learn to not take it personally that they're not talking, in the nicest way. It's nothing against ye that I didn't talk. It was that I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately is probably just one of those things that there's not an awful lot that can be done about it. As a parent, you can like reassure them and you can tell them that like it's okay to talk, but until they have that, I think that's what my thing with all of my kind of mental health has always been. Anytime I've kind of known I've needed to go and talk, or anytime I have been talking when I've got better, it's always been that you kind of just have that moment of like self-realization where like, okay, I can talk.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that tomorrow you wouldn't be scared to talk about it again, but for whatever reason in those moments you're just like, no, I can talk about it now, I can go and tell someone. But it's still extremely difficult. All you can do is let them know that you are there. And I suppose if they're not necessarily talking about the mental health stuff, just as hard as it is, I know like it sounds counterproductive to give them space, because when they're on their own it's probably when they're feeling the worst. But once you've let them kind of know that you're there and you can talk, give them that bit of space. Because I think another thing that I really struggled with was that I didn't feel like I was capable of fixing it myself.
Yeah.
I felt completely lost, and I was like, I don't want to, like, what's wrong with me that my own head, that I can't control what's going on in my own head. And obviously that's when I was younger and I didn't fully understand mental health. But it is like it's difficult to try and process it, and you, like I said, if you don't fully understand it, you don't even know where to start. But when you were coming in, because you obviously eventually kind of had ideas, and this is even when I was 16, 17, 18, even before just I moved out, when I was going through stuff, a lot of my emotion would be anger more than sad when I'm going through mental health things. So if you were coming in and you were saying, you know, you can talk to us and it's okay, instead of me or my brain taking that as, okay, they care, they want to help, it was, they don't think I'm capable of sort of doing this myself.
They're interfering.
They're interfering,
And just get out and let me alone.
So unfortunately, even if like you never ever kind of didn't make it obvious that I could talk and that it was okay to talk, it was my side that I wasn't talking, and that is obviously really difficult as a parent. But like I said, unfortunately, that is just one of those things that's just kind of, it's there, and there's not much you can unfortunately kind of do about it.
But I suppose the things you were coming to talk to us about were normal, probably isn't the right word, but you know, we'd have conversations about life and the birds and the bees and sex and all that kind of thing. That was easier for you to
Why
talk
would you say the birds and the bees and then
I
just
don't know.
say sex?
we were talking about, I don't know, anyway, but you could come and talk to me about things like that, and we'd have very strange conversations that I never thought I'd be having with my 14 or 15-year-old son. But those were things you were.
But they weren't strange though; they were open.
Open, yeah. But it's not something when you become a parent, you go, when my son's 14 or 15 and he's going to come and ask me when his ball's going to drop, and you know, things like
Excuse
that.
me, my balls had well dropped by the time I was 14,
well,
15, just to clarify.
So, and you came and asked me, and I told you I didn't know because I didn't have any to go and ask Dad, and then you asked me to ask Dad for you. But those are kind of conversations that every child goes through, but not every child necessarily goes through this feeling of anxiousness and being sad and not being able to control things and not being able to deal with things. That's not something that every teenager goes through. So it's not the run-of-the-mill conversation that a child's going to have with their parent.
No.
Or a parent is going to expect their child to come out. If you come out to me at 14 or 15 and said, "Oh, ma'am, I'm very depressed, I'm having suicidal thoughts," and I genuinely don't know how I'd react to that.
I would assume naturally you'd probably shut down and be like,
I'd shut down and
freak
I'd
out.
bawl my eyes out and think, "Oh, for God's sake," and then I'd probably get angry. "Oh, don't be so stupid, you can't be having." So it's not an easy conversation for parents, our children to have to deal with, or parents or anyone to have to deal with. But it's just something that you'd hope, like you said, that when they're ready, they will come and talk. And as a parent, they need to know that when they are ready, that you'll be there.
I think that's why me doing this podcast and having this conversation was important, because it's one of those very strange situations where I don't feel like I have much advice to actually give out on this, because I don't think there is any one solution.
No.
It's a very individual thing, a child talking to their parent about their mental health. I suppose the only thing that you can do is reassure the parents that if they do feel anxious themselves or they feel upset that their child is going through it, that is totally normal and totally valid. But like I said, I didn't know how to tell you at like 14, 15 that like I was really depressed and had suicidal thoughts or any of that. Like that's how do you tell your parents that?
There isn't an easy way to tell. And there isn't an easy way for a 14 or 15-year-old boy to sit there in his room and have these thoughts either.
No.
And try and rationalise them in their own head and figure out what the fuck is wrong with me, why am I having these thoughts and I shouldn't be having these thoughts. So it's not an easy situation. There's no easy solution to any of it. The only thing I would hope is that more and more people will talk about mental health from a very young age. We talk to children about the facts of life, but maybe parents need to start talking to children when they're a bit younger about being in a good space or not a good space, and it's fine to be in a bad space, and if you need that time, it's fine.
In my head, I would like for it's okay to not be okay to become as common of a thing said to a child as like sharing is caring.
Yeah.
Like think it's like just set it out as like another life lesson.
Yeah.
But it's not.
But we even the school I work in, we had a lady come in the last couple of weeks doing music therapy with little ones, and the one thing she does when we come in, she comes in, she put the thumb, she's asking with her name and how are you, and she'll say, and it's also very okay if you're not good and you're not in a good place today, and these are 5 and 6 year olds, you just put your thumb down and that's fine too. And that's telling them, I think that you're right, that should be taught in schools and up along, that it's okay to have a sad day, it's okay to feel bad, and it's okay not to feel okay, but it needs to be brought in from a very young age. It needs to be taught to them like everything else in school. It's taught to them like sharing is caring and all that it's okay, and more stuff should be done in schools around it, especially at the end of the schools, like primary schools.
So just to flip it around a bit, I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh.
Okay.
Jesus Christ! Never on a podcast before. Now he's taken over. Right. Okay. Go on.
Maybe we'll set up our own the Mum and Dad
my
podcast.
first and last ever time on a podcast. Yeah. So think back to when you were a teenager in transition year.
Mm-hmm.
If a young person in their mid-20s came in talking about depression, and with say the perspective that you have on it, do you think that would have helped you?
I think so, yeah. I think it would have made me realise that what I was feeling was a little bit more okay. That I wasn't. Cause I knew that I more than likely was depressed and had depression and had anxiety and all these things. I just thought that I was like some very strange exception to the rule, that I happened to have it quite young. Whereas if someone my age came in and explained their story, like that maybe they've had it for years, I suppose it would have made me feel a bit more normal. It probably would have encouraged me maybe to talk a bit more. Like that's something that I would love to be able to do. I would love to do stuff like this but in schools. I would love to be that person that's gone into like transition year classes or even younger years and just talking to them about mental health, because I think even any time I've gotten a talk in school, or even if I've gotten something similar like in work, I've had it in some jobs where like you'd have like a mental health day and stuff, but they're generally 9 times out of 10 they're these like an older gentleman that comes in and he happens to
someone like me, you mean?
Yeah, and he happens, but he wears like he's wearing like a suit and tie.
Yeah.
And it's all kind of very medical based, like the way they're talking about it, like they're like specifically explaining oh, it's like a chemical imbalance in the brain, and they use all these big terms. And fair enough, like that's what the fact is, but that doesn't, for me anyway, that doesn't sink in. I think if you were 15, 16 and you had a fella like me walk into the room with my tattoos and piercings and all that, they'd be like, okay, well, maybe they'd be like, oh Jesus, he's a bit wild, but
they'd engage with you better.
Because I would talk to them the way that they want to be spoken to, not very medical and kind of learnt off a sheet. Like, I would just have a chat, which I think is what is more important, because it's all about having the chats with everyone at any age. Is how you break like things down. You don't go on YouTube and watch a doctor talking about things and then you're like, oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's about hearing people's experiences that you kind of resonate with. So yeah, I think I would have definitely learnt more from a young person coming in talking about mental health.
Okay.
Than I would have.
One thing that you are very good at is
Talking.
public speaking. No, but not just talking.
No, I'm good at talking, but I don't use the right words. But you are good at public speaking.
Public speaking. When,
With the
if
big
you
words
if
in
you
them.
have to get up in front of people, you have a very good way of engaging with them. So I would challenge you to put a little something together and make a presentation, say to
Send it into
Desmond College,
yeah.
and say I'd love to give a chat to. I don't know how long would you want it to be? 15 minutes, half an hour?
About 3 hours.
Yeah,
Just to get the whole thing in.
Yeah.
to the transition years, and put it out there and see what the feedback is.
I know when you put that video up, you got an awful lot of very good feedback from it, and I had an awful lot of messages from it. But I had one person contact me who said that their child had looked at your photographs on Facebook and thought you were quite cool because you had all the tattoos and all that. But when he saw that, a couple of months later, he actually did go and talk to someone because he thought, well, if someone like you, who's a tough, cool dude in his eyes, could have depression and be okay about it. So I think it's your generation, it's your age group that's going to have to be the ones that changes the whole idea on depression and getting rid of that horrible taboo that was there about it for years and years and years. But it's someone like you that needs to use your ability to talk and your ability to share your feelings and get out there to help the young people, because if your generation don't do it, then unfortunately there's going to be another generation of children growing up with the same attitude to being, and you can't talk about it and you can't tell anyone because it's not something you talk about, and it's to be talking about in whispers because God, you can't.
Well, I do feel like your generation is slowly coming round to it.
Oh, we're a bit better than our my parents' generation.
No.
My parents' generation, you couldn't talk about anything to them.
Like, so like Nana and Granddad's generation, it was all very much, there was not, as far as they were concerned, there wasn't mental health.
No, they suffered
issues.
from their nerves and just God help us, but you just didn't talk about
Your
it.
generation, I find, is very 50-50. Like, I've been at like parties or whatever, and I'd be chatting away with someone, as I do, about mental health and stuff, because I don't feel like, I don't care where I am, I'll talk about it. And I get very kind of mixed reactions. Some people will be like, "Geez, you're very brave," or they'll be like, "Yeah, I understand," or they'll like talk to me back about their own mental health stuff. Other people have completely shut me down and have said, "I don't think you should be talking about that. It's a very personal thing."
But maybe those people somewhere along the way you've hit a straw. No,
Hit a straw.
No, you've pulled hit a nerve.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And they're thinking, well, shit, this is what I need to be doing, but I'm not going to. And how dare this young fella come in here and be talking to me about things? So, it is. There's very few people out there, I think, at some stage in their life, especially our age group, who haven't had an issue with mental health at some stage in their life.
I think everyone in the world will suffer from mental health, at some stage. And I
One
think,
degree or another.
especially in the last 2 years, I think a lot of people have suffered from their mental health where they might not necessarily have suffered from it before.
I know.
With like lockdowns and isolation and all that, and we're being forced to be on our own, being forced to be with our thoughts, and then obviously stuff starts spiraling.
And it's very. I was talking to someone the other day who I would never have thought would, and he, within 2 seconds of talking to me, said that he had issues since the lockdown because he's working at home in an office on his own with no one to talk to. And when he came thoughts to him, that wasn't you. When he came thoughts to him going back into the actual office, he had a full blown, and he didn't even know what he was.
Yeah.
He thought he was having a heart attack. He didn't know what he was, and he went and spoke to somebody, and I told him to look at your listen to your podcast and to have a look at your Facebook page, and he came back and just said, "Oh my God," he said, "isn't it amazing that someone of his age group give me that hope?" And now this guy is probably only 10 years older than you, but wouldn't tell his parents, wouldn't tell anyone he was, and now he's gone around telling everyone because he says there's no point in hiding it. There's a day he doesn't want to meet up with his friend, rather than lying and saying I've got a headache. He just says I'm having a bad day and I'm not meeting up, and that's what it needs to be. People need to admit, yes, I have mental health problems or I suffer from depression, but it's okay, and I'm just having a bad day, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
But not lie, give a lie about it, then it's not helping you. And by you saying it to somebody else, that person might decide, well, you know what, I think I feel this. Yeah, I feel the same, and it's okay. And the more people say it's okay, then it will become okay, and it will become part of normal conversation.
The other thing too, I think that people need to understand as well, is that going to your doctor for medication or going to a counsellor isn't like a silver bullet which is going to fix everything, because it's an ongoing thing. Depending on what it is. Depending on what it is, you may need to go back to counselling again, and it also requires a lot of work from yourself, because you need to understand yourself what causes it,
Yeah.
what triggers it, and what you can do to counteract that if those situations turn up again, or that you can realize that, oh, this is where I am with this now,
Yeah.
and what you can do to get out of it again. And and again, it's all, there's no one size fits all for everybody. It's different for everybody. And if even if you go to a counsellor and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean that counselling is not for you. It just means that you didn't have the right counsellor at the time. There's so many different things that you can do to help your mental health, and also requires a lot of hard work from yourself.
Yeah.
But it also requires recognising the sign, because I mean and I'm quite open about it now, I wouldn't have been before, that I've been to quite a lot of counselling, but it's now got to the stage where I can know myself that I need to go and talk to someone. I don't need to wait until I'm on my knees altogether. I just realise, I'm getting a bit overwhelmed now with things. I can't process these thoughts myself, so I'm just going to go to someone. And the last time I went to someone, she didn't even charge me, because she said, you know what you have to do. But it was just the fact that I was in that room, in that environment with her, and she said, you know exactly what you have to do, Noreen. I'm not even going to charge you for this one. But for me, it's the relief of knowing that person is there.
But it just gave you the opportunity to put everything into place that you needed.
Yeah, and for her to say, you know what you're doing. Just so it doesn't have to be a case of waiting until you're absolutely on your knees to go to counselling. And hopefully you will get. Everybody should go to counselling at some stage of their life. Everybody, because everybody has shit, whether they like to admit it or not. And it should be there. You just go. It's like going to your doctor. You're going to your dentist. You go to your counsellor.
Like the car gets an NCT.
Yeah.
Every year,
And
every
you
couple
need
of
to
years.
Service every year.
You'll go and get your bloods done. You'll go and get everything else done. But your mind, you need to go and have that checked on as well, and just make sure that you're going along. And there's loads of people out there that will help you along.
Or like, again, even if you just look at me as an example, I've been to 5 different counsellors and I've been on medication twice. And it's not that any one of those counsellors didn't work or those medications didn't work. Every one of them has worked at the time, depending on what issue I was talking about. But I know for a fact I won't sit here and say I'll never again be in counselling, because I won't. I think I'm always going to need a bit of counselling, and that's just.
But it's not. Yeah, but it's not a bad thing that you're going to.
No, it's not. And that's what I'm saying. There's no one fix. Some people might go have 7-8 sessions and be fine, and that's grand. Most of my counselling is normally 12 plus sessions. Like I said, I've been on medication twice. I personally don't like how I feel on it. I would never discourage anyone from going on it. If I felt like I needed it again, I would.
But it's different counsel for different things.
Yeah, but
when I was younger, I went to counsel for one particular thing. After Dad died, I needed a grief counsellor, and I found the most amazing lady. And then I found another one online last year when I was going through a difficult patch with lockdown and COVID and worrying about Mum and all that. So there's different counsellors there but it's for different times in your life. And I mean, I was very bad last summer, and I've never got on medication. But I knew last summer that I just wasn't coping, and I went to my doctor and then put me on. And for me, it has worked. For me, it definitely has worked, because I really felt by the end of August last year that I was going totally under. So for me, the medication, but I did the medication with the counselling.
Yeah.
I did the both together. And I know at the moment I don't need to talk to a counsellor, but I do know that if in 6 weeks' time or 2 weeks' time I'm beginning to get that feeling of, I'm not able to deal with everything that's going around me, I'll pick the phone up and I'll go to see them again. And that's where people need to get to know that the people are there, and if you don't find the right one the first time, you try again the second time, and you may even be better to talk to someone on the phone. I found during COVID talking to a lady on the phone was absolutely brilliant, because I couldn't go and see her personally. After Dad died, I needed to sit with someone face to face. So it's about getting the idea into your head that there's nothing wrong with going to talk to a counsellor.
I think overall, the thing that would stop a lot of the issues that we've even talked about is just breaking down the stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
Because I think if mental health, like talking about mental health or having mental health problems wasn't such a big bad thing. One, I would have been more educated. I would have been more aware. I would have known that it was okay to talk.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have felt okay, or I wouldn't have felt like scared about talking to you in the first place when I was 13, 14. And then you would have also had more information at your disposal about what to do for a child
Who
when they're
suffers
going, because
from-
there isn't
There's
enough,
no-
or if
no.
there is, it's hard to find it.
No.
I think that, and then again, it would break down the whole idea of if you need to talk to someone, that's okay. It doesn't mean that you're broken or that you need fixing. It
No.
just means that.
But nobody's broken.
No.
We're just, things are just gone a bit
Or like
awry
if
in your head.
you have a headache, you take a Panadol, you take a painkiller.
Yeah.
So if you're going through some mental health stuff and you need to take some medication for it, that's perfectly alright. There's nothing wrong with it.
Something you said there 2 seconds ago, you said mental health problems, but it shouldn't be seen as necessarily as a problem. Not that you're saying it, but that's what people say, oh, they got mental health problems or they got helpless, but it shouldn't be seen as a problem either. It's just there's another part of your health that isn't working the way you want it to work. So you go and you get it sorted. But it shouldn't be. There should definitely be more open talk about it. And I think definitely your generation should be now going into the schools and working with the kids that I work with and let them know from a very early age that it's okay to not be okay, and that it's okay to say things out, and the parents will understand then that if they come to them and say something, the parents won't freak out either, because they're going to say, well, this is a possibility in the day and age that we're living in, that a young teenager will be suffering from depression.
Yeah.
But it's just about getting it out there. So it's down to you guys, I'm afraid. We're too old now to be making major changes. It's down to you lot. You have the power and you have the voices now to try and make a change.
And the platforms.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I have two angles. I want to help. I like sometimes I'm like, no, I need to go for like the younger generation and explain to them that it is okay, and like that their feelings are valid and that it's like there's nothing wrong with them. But then the other side of me wants to go for like the older generations and try and change their mind.
But it depends on what age group. I mean, our age group, you have, like, so you definitely have changed my view on it, and listening to you has made me talk more openly about it and be quite happy to say yes, that I have suffered from depression and I'm on medication or whatever. But I think a lot of people that bit older than us, you won't change their mind,
No.
unfortunately. So it has to, I mean, we're not old, so it has to be from, we're not old.
No, you're not
We're in our
old.
prime.
Yeah.
But it has to be from our generation down. But I think it's like with Anton, with youngsters, if you teach them from a very young age, that's where you're going to get them, and that's where by the time they get into teenage years, they know that they have the tools to deal with it, and that there's people out there to help them. If you get them young, and from working
If you
with
can
children all
explain
my
to
life,
them,
if you can explain to them on their level, children transitioning from primary school into secondary school, that's the biggest fear I have for kids, because they're not able to deal with that transition anyway, and they're starting sixth class. And you can see it every year. They're going around the yard, oh, we're sixth class and we can do what we like and blah, blah, blah. And they're so cocky. And then suddenly in September, they're down the very bottom again in a massive big school with a load of people to deal with and loads of things. And that's that transition where things can fall. And that's where they need the help. They need it in sixth class, and then they definitely need it in transition year future before they go out into the big. They're expected to go out into the big world and learn to live as adults when they're still not adults, they're still children.
like my big focus would be, if I was talking to schools, I'd have two separate talks. I'd have like talks for the junior cycle and talks for the senior cycle.
Yeah.
Because I think
You have to tailor to their needs.
there's too much focus. Well, not there's too much focus on leaving cert, like what you're going to do the rest of your life. But I think the focus should be what you're going to do for the rest of your life is like
What you do for a living isn't.
it shouldn't be it shouldn't be what you're doing on the living. It should be like your life goals.
Yeah.
Like have a job or just remain content.
But just be happy.
I think happy is something. I don't say happy because I think happy is too broad of a thing to strive for. I say content because I think it's easy, it's more consistent.
Yeah, I suppose.
But that's just me, mother. That's just the way
that's
I.
just you. But
that's
it's not all
just-
about
That's what you will.
You taught me well.
It's not all about going into college and having the big job and the big car and the biggest. I mean, there's people in the world, I'm sure, that I have all that, and they're as miserable as fuck. Sorry, miserable as sin. Sorry. You see, I've totally
The language
forgotten.
is terrible.
I've totally forgotten now, and I'm just sitting here on a Sunday morning chatting away with you. and
There's
I've
people
totally
that have all
forgotten.
their money and they're miserable as fuck.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So if you're not happy, if you're not content with things, you might as well not have anything at all. So I think definitely your generation is the way to go.
Oh, jeez, we've been talking for over an hour now, so I should probably try and
Oh shit.
wrap it up. Will you stop
Sorry.
fucking cursing, will you?
But sure, I'm so relaxed now. I could sit here all day and I forget the thing is on. Sorry, people, for swearing.
Oh, Christ. Have you anything else to add before we finish?
I'm gonna get a word in
I think
edgeways.
I think we've
covered it all.
Everything's been covered, and hopefully we might have planted a seed in your head for something as well. Who knows?
What, that I might do something with my life
Yeah.
instead of being miserable.
Exactly.
But the most important thing about Valentine's is we're very, very proud of you. Very proud of you.
fucking snowflakes.
You're an amazing young man, and I can see you're going to go on and help an awful lot of people.